Hey everyone! Welcome back. I am back today with more Mob Psycho 100. You guys, I'm really excited. I can't wait to see what happens next. If you're joining me early today, you already know what it means. It means you are one of my awesome patrons. Thank you so much, and as always, I'm sending you up those big old hugs right through that screen. And if not, still thank you for joining me today. I'm glad you're here. I do hope you'll consider supporting me that way. The link to my Patreon is going to be in the description down below. So, we had a pretty upsetting ending last time on Mob Psycho. I was already getting kind of worried about Mob with some of the things he was quite obviously dealing with and going through. Yeah. Last episode ramped up my worry quite a bit because, you know, Mob's been dealing with these feelings of kind of being torn in the way that he sees the world. You know, when he's presented with, like he was a few episodes ago, a spirit that's not really evil, it kind of turns a lot of his thinking on its head, I think. And we saw how he was having a really hard time dealing with that. But on top of that, and all these like existential questions he was having about like just kind of being alone in the way he sees the world and alone in his power level, we go ahead and introduce someone who has strong psychic powers, but not in a good way. So we started off with this really, like, not fun, I hate to say it's fun, like an exorcism story about a girl who's, like, been possessed, but I mean, there were some pretty fun points, like Reagan using all his moves and everything, until it wasn't fun anymore, and Mob decides to let Dimple, keep his body for a second, which, don't know, I don't see that going very well, and he decides to try and possess the girl who's possessed in order to try and stop this evil spirit of someone who was once a very powerful psychic. While he's in there, he's told that, you know, basically, and I had suspected this all along, that well, we kind of knew. We knew that the psychic powers were linked to emotions, and that when Mob's emotions kind of like start to overpower him, that's when he hits 100% and goes out of control. But it sounds like psychic powers like are like driven. They are emotions, like basically. And apparently, according to this individual, the negative emotions are much, much more powerful than positive ones. So where we left off was he's putting Mob in kind of like not a virtual reality, but like an ESP kind of virtual reality of like, I adjusted your memory so that you don't have powers, and let's see how you get along now, basically. So little bit scared about that, not gonna lie. Very scared about how dark and how heavy things turn so quickly. But I like that they're exploring these themes a lot. I think when you can have a show that balances like the kind of fun quirkiness with these like really, you know, heavy existential kind of questions, I think that's a recipe for a really good show. So I'm worried. I want to find out what's going to happen. What do you say we jump right in? Next episode of Mob Psycho. Let's go. All right, you guys, let's talk, because that was such a good episode. So I was kind of right, I think that particular character, Mogami, is going to be showing up again, and he will kind of remain sort of a on and off villain of the series, maybe, or at least of the season, at least of some length of time. I loved what we saw in this episode of Mob just, like, at first starting to give in to everything that he was being exposed to, but then like as soon as he remembered who he really was, his takeaways from it were so profound that, you know, anyone can change. He has changed, others around him have changed, and you know, it's true. Like, I feel like actual Mob, like once he came to his senses a little bit, when Dimple came in to kind of like shake him up, would realize that is all like just unnecessarily awful as the bullies were being. Nobody is just awful for the sake of being awful, you know, like they probably have some kind of horrible, tragic story as well. Not that that makes what they're doing right or good in any way, but like he said, you know, people can change, and if you look at it that way, no one is worthless. No one is like, because Mogami was trying to convince him like, they're just a waste. Just like get rid of them. We'd be better off without them. And boy, for a second I thought maybe he'd really do it, but thank God Dimple showed up. I love the new form that we got to see in this one. The positive explosion mob. It had like kind of the same look as when we've seen Mob explode in the past, but he was in control a little bit more, and you could clearly tell like from his eyes, like it was Mob. That was very, very cool to watch. The whole scene, the whole like end battle scene was so beautifully done. Like, my God, that looked gorgeous. And for the first time since the Teru fight, way back when, we got to see the question percent mob, which, as Mogami pointed out, is when his vessel's not there, that's what's inside. So is that like Mob's soul? Is that the epitome of all his powers? Is that something else entirely inside of him? We don't really know. They just cut to him waking up. So that's something we've got to look forward to. That and running into the bad guy from this again. Also, like, someone came in. Had we seen that person before? Because it sounded like we knew them. It sounded like Reagan knew them. And he just like came in and just kind of like collected the bad guy and left. And we saw him kind of like in the shadows doing something during the fight too. Very interesting. Lot of things that I think are probably going to come back in the future, and I'm very, very curious to see. So I just love Mob. I love I love what he's all about. I love that he just has this positivity and humility that, like, on the one hand, he's so real, because like he very obviously, there is kind of a difference in the way that he processes things, and he does have like difficulty. You know, it's not like he's perfect or anything, but in a way, like his spirit and his way of being are like such a huge goal of like, man, if you could be like, he has so many things right about the way that he looks at the world, you know what I mean? It's really inspiring. But like he said, like a lot of that has been shaped by the people around him. So, you know, people aren't just like static, you know, people are ever changing and affected by the things around them, for good and for bad. I thought that Mogami's story was really tragic. It really is a shame that like his mother's sickness was brought on by like all the stuff he had been doing, and he felt like because he was a pawn, like working to help people and everything, his life was just destroyed. But I think that's clearly not the case with Mob, and it's definitely not necessarily true of like every case, obviously. I loved it. So many new things we got in this episode, like the little hint about the vessel thing. I loved it, guys. Great stuff. I'm so glad we wrapped it up and Mob is safe, while still kind of keeping things open enough to kind of come back and explore this more. So, you guys, I cannot wait to see what's gonna happen next. It was a great episode. I had a blast with it. I hope you had as much fun as I did. Thank you so much for joining me. Please be sure to join me next time, and we will watch it together. Bye for now, guys.